There is an intense amount of pressure going into your graduate medical school interviews, not least because the stakes are so high. You only get 4 chances, a maximum of 4 interviews per year, and no matter how much preparation you do, it all comes down in the end to your performance on that day. What are you telling me? My name is Marius and I'm a 3rd year graduate medical student at Southampton. But before I started on this course at the best graduate medical school in the entire universe, I was applying my mediocre intellect to try and get better at the sport of rugby union. As a small man growing up, in order to differentiate myself, I had to become very skillful. And because of this, I spent years trying to learn and apply techniques that would allow me to deliver in high pressure moments like this.
With what, 5 or so minutes left to play? Sent it on its way, the crowd are silent, but it's over! And maybe Ben has cooked up the victory here for Durham. They lead by 1 point. 5 minutes to go.
I'm going to be gassed that I'm still wheeling that moment out, but I'm still living off it. You know what I'm saying? I'm still living off it. In this video, I'm going to give you 4 basic techniques that I come back to very regularly, and they help me to deal with the nerves and the horrible amount of pressure that you might be feeling going into your graduate medical school interviews. Alright, so you're rocking up to your graduate medical school interview and you start feeling quite sick, a bit jittery, you know, you're moving around there, you know, you're moving like that. You're nervous and you're feeling what they colloquially call butterflies. But what is actually happening is that the interview is providing a threat stimulus. Your sympathetic nervous system is being activated in preparation for fight or flight. So it's very tempting to think butterflies are a negative thing. And this is definitely a trap that I've fallen into in the past. You're feeling nauseated, a little bit jittery, and you interpret those feelings as negative. I guess the insinuation is that because you're feeling nervous like this, then you're not going to be able to perform at your best. However, feeling like this creates a vicious cycle. So as you're feeling nervous, you're feeling worried about being nervous, that makes you more nervous, and then you spiral down so your performance declines. So the idea is that instead of seeing these nerves and these butterflies as a negative thing, how about seeing them, as Dave Aldred writes, as high octane fuel for an incredible performance. That's cheesy as old boots, you know, cheesy, bro. Alright, but actually I think this can be quite a powerful mindset shift. So if I can convince you, or if you can convince yourself, that this surge of adrenaline that you're feeling in response to the threat of the interview is actually a positive thing, it's going to help you to remain alert. You know, you're going to be on job, your cognition's going to improve. Then when you come to feel the butterflies, you're going to start thinking, yes, here we go. I have my fuel for an excellent performance here. I'm going to go in there and deliver. Anyway, this is definitely something that I tend to think about in times of pressure, and I think it can be quite nicely epitomized by the following quote. It's not about trying to get rid of the butterflies, it's about trying to get them to fly in formation. You know, like that. I might get that tattooed somewhere, you know what I'm saying? Maybe on my forehead. The next technique that's going to help you in dealing with pressure in an interview scenario is the skillful use of language and self-talk. So Dave Aldred writes that skillful use of language can increase self-esteem, create a dramatic boost in confidence, reframe and transform meaning, and change behavior and attitude. The idea is that certain words are powerful and emotive, and if you can incorporate some of these words into your self-talk, then it's going to give you a sense that you're in control, even though you might not be. But for example, this guy Dave Aldred works with a lot of people who do high pressure sports, and he gives them little sentences that they can fall back on in times of pressure that give them a feeling of control. For example, he talks about giving this golfer who was vying for you know, the win, he gave him the following sentence to think about when he was, you know, really feeling the pressure at the intense end of this competition. Be tall in execution and singularly ruthless in mind. Singularly. As you can see, it's filled with emotive words. Execution, singularly ruthless. You know, weirdly, I think about this when I'm going up to take a conversion or in an interview. You know, if you think that you're a ruthless operator, you're going to go in and deliver your best performance, the best version of yourself, then that's going to give you some semblance that you're in control of a situation that is obviously uncontrollable and unpredictable. So that leads us nicely onto the next thing, which is to use command posture. So what is command posture? Well, command posture is literally just like taking up space, being in big postures like that, Superman thing, you know, like that. But there's actually some research that seems to suggest that getting into these big postures can reduce your levels of anxiety and increase your level of self-confidence. In the study referenced in this widely seen TED Talk, they got volunteers to spit in a cup and then they split them into 2 groups. They then got one group to assume these high power positions for 2 minutes and the other group to do the low power positions for 2 minutes. They then got them to spit in a cup again, and they basically measured the amount of salivary cortisol and testosterone before and after doing these poses. What they found was that in those people doing 2 minutes of this low power pose, all hunched up and that, they found that there was a 15% increase in their levels of salivary cortisol and a 10% decrease in their levels of salivary testosterone. In the other group doing the Superman pose, they found that there was a 20% increase in their testosterone and a 25% decrease in their cortisol. Obviously, the intellectual leap here is the fact that, you know, having more testosterone in your system increases your confidence, but I'm happy to make that leap. Since I subscribe to this scientific model, I found myself before my interviews in the bog, you know, getting into these command postures for 2 minutes, setting a timer on my watch, you know, feeling that testosterone just rising in me, going out there, securing 2 interviews, getting 2 rejections, obviously. But no, a lot of people do this before taking conversions. These are high pressure environments, you know, they get into big postures in the hope that they feel more in control, and it actually does have some scientific underpinning. The fourth and final thing that I want to talk about is this thing called the don't miss mentality, and this is something to avoid. Again, this is a subtle mindset shift, but you should be going into your interviews thinking, I want to perform well, not that I want to avoid failing. Alright, this sounds a bit bobbensy, but to convince you of the usefulness of this, imagine that you're throwing paper into a bin, and every time you get one in, you get a reward. Now imagine that you're throwing paper into a bin and the rules have slightly changed. Every time you miss, you get a punishment. Actually, this is an experiment that was referenced in that Pressure Principle book. They found that when the rules were changed so that you were punished for missing instead of rewarded for succeeding, the people throwing paper into the bin were very tight and they were missing, actually coming up short all the time because their muscles were tight. Because obviously they were worried about getting punished or fined for missing. So applying this to your graduate medical school interview, you should try and avoid thinking like, I can't not get in this time, you know, it's my 4th year in a row, I can't be bothered to go back and work with flipping Debbie at Costa for another year so I can reapply to graduate medicine. This is a don't miss mentality, and I believe thinking like this creates anxiety and will affect your performance in the interview and make it actually more likely that you'll be back with Debbie working in Costa. It is much more beneficial to your performance to try and think about moving towards success, trust in your preparation and back yourself and think, well, someone has to get this place, so why not me? This is such a wedge topic and it's something that I've thought about for a number of years. I'm currently in the process of making a Skillshare course on it, so if you fancy, you know, if you're interested in that kind of crap, then feel free to watch that. Otherwise, I hope these tips were reasonably useful to you, and good luck for your graduate medical school interviews if they're coming up. Cheers.